guys, welcome back. Linda with the Melanated Way in conjunction with Master of BlackJack. We are back with our Seeking Sister Wife series, and we are so excited to talk about this next family and talk to them and see how they've been doing, what they've been doing, because we kind of feel like we still have questions since season 3 ended. So let me pop them on screen. Welcome, the Winder family, Colton, Tami, Sophie, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. How are you guys?
We're doing good. Yeah, doing really good.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What's new and exciting?
Well, since the show or?
Since the show.
I'm currently expecting. We're expecting the third child.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yep.
So that kind of gets me into my question. So let's just kind of get started. I jumped into Seeking Sister Wife in season 3. So I didn't know about your season 2 until I went back to watch it. Now I want to kind of start there and your beginning and how you got involved in the show and how it changed from season 2 to season 3. Colton, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, that sounds good.
How has it changed for you? So from season 2
to season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the way we first got involved in the show was actually in season 1. Tami and I were contacted and asked if we wanted to be on the show in season 1. And we talked about it for a couple of months and decided that we didn't really want to do it at that time. So they actually came back for season 2 after we had married Sophie and asked if we wanted to be on the show at that point in time. And we said, yeah, we can do it at that time after we deliberated again for a couple of months about it. And then we went through season 2. And obviously in season 3, the biggest difference was what has been different in the world for everybody the past year and a half or so. It's just all of the COVID messiness. It really interrupted a lot of the filming and stuff in season 3. As far as I can think, that's been the biggest difference for us between the 2 seasons.
Well, the fact that we moved into a house together.
Yeah, that too.
Right. Because you guys were jumping back and forth that previous season, correct?
Yeah.
So I want to circle back, Colton. So what changed? So you deliberated, you said, for a couple of months. And what changed in that deliberation that you guys felt you were ready to do season 2?
When we were thinking about doing the first season, Tami and I were still really quiet about the way we believed and the way we felt like we should live. We hadn't really told anybody, or families included. We just decided at that point in time we weren't really ready to step out and try and be an example of a positive view of plural marriage. But by the time season 2 came around, we had married Sophie. Our families knew about it. It was a little more open. And we felt at that point in time like we were in a good place to try and, I guess, be sort of a light set on a hill rather than hiding it. So
I love that answer. So Tami, I want to talk to you a little bit about if it's the same. So what I'm learning, and I'm still learning, so forgive me if I get some things wrong. Living the plural lifestyle, there's a first wife, second wife, and then it goes on. Do you guys subscribe to that as well?
Yeah, so I'm the first wife, Sophie's the second wife, another wife will be the third wife. So we do believe in it that way.
As far as how we treat wives, though, a wife is a wife.
Right.
There isn't any sort of hierarchy with first wife, second wife. We all just kind of work together as an equal team.
Yeah.
As much as possible.
And as I was reading about your family specifically, I want to talk a little bit about how faith plays a role in your relationship. Because what I found interviewing all the different couples this season is that it's a little bit different for every couple, which was surprising to me because I thought living a plural lifestyle was just living a plural lifestyle. But for you guys specifically, it's very faith-based. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
So in the early days of our religion, of our faith, plural marriage was a very common practice. It was something that the entire membership believed in. And obviously at the time, society didn't really approve of it, and the United States government did everything they could to shut that down. So the sort of the mainstream movement in our church, in our religion, kind of gave that doctrine up and moved beyond it. Some people decided it was still a true doctrine and stuck with it. And that's kind of where we have come into it at. So we have a long tradition of living this way, which I think has helped make our marriage what it is, because we have examples of it. We have doctrines behind it. We actually have a reason to live this way beyond just constructing our family like this. There's a higher power that we answer to and that we believe governs a lot of our actions.
And so I'm going to ask you, Sophie, what are some of those doctrines that you guys believe? So for an outside person that doesn't know what the doctrines are, and knowing that your lifestyle is primarily based in your faith, what would some of those doctrines be for like a lay person who doesn't know?
Put me on the spot here.
It can be a group answer.
Let's love it.
In our religion, we have what we call 13 articles of faith, and they're basically our most basic sort of intrinsic beliefs. They're things like we believe in God the Eternal Father and in Jesus Christ and in the Holy Ghost. We believe that men will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression. What else? We believe in the organization of the church as it was in primitive days, in the days of Christ. If there's anything in the world that's beautiful, that's praiseworthy, that's, of good repute, we seek after those things and try and adopt those things in our lives. We believe that truth is truth no matter what source it comes from. And that's all, like I said, that's all kind of very foundational in our belief.
Right.
Plural marriage is kind of more of a deeper doctrine for us. Ultimately, we believe that this life is all about progression. It's about becoming the best person that we can become. And that progression, we believe, carries on into the next life. And for us, there are some lessons that we learn, both Tami and Sophie and myself as well, that we don't believe can be learned any other way than in this lifestyle. And it's kind of interesting to me to hear people outside of the Mormon tradition call this kind of relationship plural marriage, because growing up, that was always sort of a very Mormon-centric term. You didn't really hear plural marriage used outside of our community. It was just, it was polygamy or for some people, polyamory, those sorts of things. So it's kind of been interesting to me to see the growth of that term plural marriage used in other beliefs and other cultures and other lifestyle choices.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you guys all meet? Did you meet in the church?
No, Colton and I we were still technically in the church. We were kind of on the outskirts of it at that time because we had decided to love plural marriage and it's not an accepted belief in the church anymore. So we kind of knew that we were kind of pushing out of that. And then we met Sophie, and once we got married and everything, we ended up being excommunicated from the church. So we weren't part of it after that. And Sophie is
What?
just that I was gonna let you say it.
Just about how we met.
Yeah,
her.
just your bit.
I had decided like a week before I met them that I wasn't going to get married, and and so I just decided, I'm going to just live my life. And it had been a while since I had been a part of kind of any sort of conversations about my religion and gospel conversations, and so I was actually talking to my grandmother, who she's really the upline of why I'm in plural marriage, because she converted to we call it the fullness of the gospel. She converted, and then my mom was a plural wife, and then I followed suit. But I was just talking to her, and I said, we need to have some good gospel discussions. We need to find some like-minded believers. And I ended up going on social media, and I got a notification with a group that I was in. And I looked at the notification and kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, because some people in this religion are very, very outspoken.
Very argumentative.
And argumentative, yeah. And so then I like kind of scrolled down a little bit, and it was that same day that I saw this really long post, and I kind of skimmed through it a little. It was really long.
I can be wordy sometimes. It's what you see on the show.
Don't worry, same. Editors always say, you need to cut that down a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I saw Southern Utah in the full context or content. What is that word? Content. And so then I'm like, oh, hey. And I was like, there's someone here local. And so then I scrolled back up and read the whole thing. And
she ended up
messaging Colton, and that's where it started. And then me and my grandma met up with Tami and Colton just to talk to them about kind of where they're at and their beliefs, and just talk gospel.
Now, Tami and Colton, did you know immediately that she would be a fit, or did that happen over time?
No, we didn't know immediately.
Yeah, I mean, we liked her, and she was like the first person that we talked to that had a similar background to us, and a similar belief system to us. We hadn't really talked to anyone that way. So there was that, and we had good conversations. We hit it off, but it wasn't until like 3 or 4 meetings in that it was like, well, this could go somewhere else.
We hadn't met under the pretenses of a relationship. We were under like-minded believers talking about the gospel, and it wasn't until like a couple of getting togethers with like my grandma and my mom and my little brother had joined us, and we were sitting in these guys' living rooms, and we're just talking, and my grandmother is looking at Colton's priesthood line, and yeah, you come from good stock, and then she comes out and says, well, Sophie may be joining your family. Like, oh my gosh, because it had never been said between any of us that it was even that at all. And so that's when it kind of started, and we started talking about a courtship and what a courtship was, and what we thought about that. Did we think that that's where we were at and that's what we wanted, and then it proceeded from there.
So let's talk a little bit, because we do have to talk about Kimberly. So I think that this is a good segue. So you had been talking to Kimberly for quite some time. You finally, with COVID and all that, you finally did get to meet her. And I'll start with you, Colton, because I guess what it came across as that you weren't really attracted to her, and not in just the physical sense, but just in like, it's not a fit for our family. How did you know that after a few days?
We have been talking to her. We still are, actually, occasionally. She's still a good friend, but we had been talking to her for quite a long time. So I'd become pretty familiar with her background and a little bit about how she approaches life. And I think she's an absolutely beautiful woman with a wonderful spirit. She's very kind, very outgoing. There were just a lot of differences, and just differences in views about life and about religion and families and things like that. And I just sort of felt like it would be a lot of work for us all to get on the same page. And it didn't really come across on the show, but it was a mutual decision. After Kimberly came to visit us, we all kind of mutually decided that we would just continue a friendship.
Okay.
There wasn't a good fit, and she's really in a pretty good position in North Carolina, where she's at. So I didn't feel very comfortable pursuing it if we weren't absolutely certain.
That absolutely makes sense. Now let's talk a little bit about being on TV and what that has looked like for you and how that has changed your life. And I'll start with you, Tami.
Well, it has changed everything in our life, really. Of all of the people in my family, I was the last person that I would ever guess to do something like this, because I am just kind of,
chill,
radar, stay quiet.
She posts on social media like once a year.
Yeah. So it's changed a lot with that. It's taken a lot of getting used to this idea that there are people out there that are interested in our life and what we're doing, and that they want to hear what we have to say about everything. And that has been really, really strange to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's been an adjustment. And yeah, being on the TV show, just all the way production is, it was just a pretty good learning curve there. And so it was a good experience. It's been good, but it has been a lot of information and change.
Now, do you guys feel more comfortable now being in front of the camera in this third season as opposed to your previous season?
For sure.
Definitely, yeah. The second season for us, I guess. The second season was, we didn't really know what we were doing. We were still just coming out with the lifestyle. We hadn't even told, everyone in our community and things. So it was a pretty big thing for us to do that. And then by the second season, or the third season, I guess, by the third season, we had done all of that. Everyone really knew. We had experienced a whole season of production and kind of knew what to expect with all of that. And so by the time we started filming again, it was a lot easier to be more comfortable with talking with the producers and being on the camera and all those things.
What's the biggest misconception about your family?
That Colton is quiet and doesn't have an opinion.
There's a quote by Plato that I try and live my life by. It says, "A wise man speaks because he has something to say, and a fool speaks because he has to say something."
Okay, I like that.
I'll say it, but otherwise, I don't like speaking.
And were you guys surprised how many people, like fan base, kind of rallied behind your family? Tami, specifically you, and some of the fertility struggles and being open and honest on camera could not have been easy to do.
Yeah, it has been very heartening, and it was surprising to me. Like, I didn't think anyone would really care, and then to have everyone be like so responsive and kind was really amazing to me.
We had a lot of messages from people offering advice and support and things like that for
and from what I've seen too, also people relating, like trying to have that same journey, but not able to always have the conversation openly and honestly. So just even from a fan perspective, we appreciate you sharing that part of your private journey, right? Because it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Really quick, I can't necessarily speak for any of the other casts, but we tried very hard to make sure that everything we portrayed was as authentic and genuine as possible. And obviously, I mean, we only have so much control over what actually makes it onto your television.
Yeah.
But we did our best to be as authentic as we could be.
I love that. Now, I want to talk about, we kind of touched on it in the very beginning of our interview, but the growing family. So congratulations again. You're growing your family. What does that look like? Are we still seeking a sister wife?
I definitely think that, what we've always said is with this lifestyle and the belief system that we hold regarding it, if there's a woman that's supposed to be a part of our family, then we are all open to adding her to the family. And I think all of us want a third wife. I think that it would be nice to have kind of a balancing out, and I know that's kind of the more surface things of if Tami and Colton are on a date, then I'll still have someone home with me. That's a small thing, but really in the bigger scheme of things is we believe that this lifestyle helps provide growth in a sense of our personal growth, not just the growth of our family. And so being around someone else and their personality, we think adds to our growth and to our overall picture and why we live this way.
So what happens when there's a disagreement? So with some of the other couples on the show, they have family meetings and they have sit downs. What do you guys do when there's a disagreement?
We have Sunday talks.
We usually try to nip it in the bud. We don't actually wait till Sundays.
We used to wait till Sunday.
When we lived in 2 separate houses, we did. Now we don't.
We used to not be able to talk candidly with each other, and then after we moved in together, we started getting more comfortable with each other. We started trusting each other more. And now if there's an issue, we try and talk about it right there and then so that we don't carry any of the feelings of that issue further than they need to be. So if there's something like a misunderstanding or if we're feeling something before, like from season 2 time period, we would wait like weeks before we would talk about it. And now we talk about it like 10 minutes later or, an hour later if it's still bothering us, whatever it is. But yeah, we're pretty good at communicating now, and we try and do that. And so we don't have to have Sunday talks very often anymore.
So does everyone do all 3 of you get involved in the talk? Or what if they're, for example, and I'm just making this up. So let's say Tami and Colton have a disagreement. Do you 2 talk about that disagreement, or do the 3 of you talk about the disagreement?
Depends on what the disagreement is, partially.
Okay.
But also, if, for example, if Tami and I couldn't resolve it, we might ask Sophie to kind of help mediate it.
It's actually really good that way. The way we're able to do that, we can kind of use each other as like therapists, and they can see things from a different perspective, or just be like, I think what Colton was trying to say is this, and kind of help bring a different perspective to the situation that helps resolve it better.
At the very least, they can commiserate with each other.
I was gonna say, if there's a decision to be made and 2 people are on board and the 3rd person isn't on board quite as quickly, is it like a democracy, like the 2 win over the 1? How does that work?
We try and make sure that doesn't happen. Like, even say Colton wants to do something and I'm on board with it, I'm not ready to proceed until I know that Tami is on board with it too. So I won't be like, hey, I agree with Colton, let's do this. I won't do that. I'll be like, well, what are your thoughts on this? This is what I think, and this is why I think it might be a good idea. What do you think? And we try and just all be on the same page with moving forward with whatever the decision is.
And if that doesn't happen, we just move forward. We find another compromise or a different solution or a different thing to do.
That makes sense. Now, I read in a Utah article that Utah has decriminalized polygamy, and it's considered an infraction now and not a felony. And I also read that part of it may have had to do with you guys coming out on season 2. Do you think that you may have played a small role in that?
I definitely think we had an impact. Obviously, there have been other families that came out long before ours did. The Brown family, the Dargers, the Fosters, the Williams family. So there have been a lot of families that have been more involved in it for a long time. But I definitely think we had a small impact to play. Tami and I spent a day at our state capitol lobbying for the decriminalization bill, and we wrote to legislators and tried to drum up support with friends to write to legislators. And I think overall that it had an impact. I'm not sure how big though.
That's fantastic. I actually didn't know that it was a felony up until that point. I thought, and it might just be like my Canadian way, but I thought that polygamy was acceptable in Utah.
Polygamy actually has the harshest, even with the decriminalization to an infraction, Utah still has the harshest laws in the nation against polygamy.
Why do you think that is?
Because the mainstream LDS church was so determined to try and stamp it out. And they have a lot of influence politically in the state.
See, and I thought it was the other way. So thank you for sharing that, because I thought it was the other way.
Yeah, in most other states in the nation, you can get convicted of polygamy if you have more than 1 marriage license. In Utah, you can get convicted of polygamy if you claim to be married to somebody besides your legal spouse, and if you live with them.
Wow.
Which, technically, if couple was married and were separated for a couple of years, and one of them started living with somebody else, they could technically be charged with polygamy, even if they weren't technically still with their legal spouse, if they had never taken the time to get a legal divorce.
And that's like 50% of the nation.
Yeah, no, so
Yeah.
I mean,
the law makes no sense.
yeah, it really doesn't. Okay, so I wanted to play a little quick game with you. So I'm gonna start with Sophie. Sophie, I'm gonna have you describe Colton and then Tami in 5 words.
Each, 5 words each.
5 words each.
Okay. I would have to say introverted for both.
Okay.
Colton is very strong in his
Okay.
beliefs.
Okay.
He's a hard worker.
Okay.
He is very, very morally right. Like morally right. He always does things morally, which I love and admire. How many is that?
4. 1 more for Colton.
Okay. I'd have to say he's pretty handsome.
Handsome. Okay, so you have 1 for Tami. You have 4 more to go.
Tami is very kind and loving, and she's very thoughtful, and I want to think of a word that describes a good portion of what I'm trying to think, but I'd have to put in more words. I don't know. She's the best sister wife I could have asked for.
Aww, that's so sweet. Colton, you're up.
I'll start with the low-hanging fruit for both of them. Sophie's very extroverted. Tami is introverted, so she's right in that. And they are both very beautiful, inside and out. I'm a very blessed man. Sophie is very driven. She's successful, and she's very loving.
Aww.
Very loving. Tami is... There's a lot of things I can say about both of them. Tami is a very understanding person. I can talk with Tami about anything, and she can just be open-minded about it, non-judgmental, very understanding. Tami's also very compassionate. She really cares a lot about other people, even if she doesn't always necessarily express that. She really does. And I think if I had one more word to describe Tami, it would probably just be rock solid, in the sense that she's always been a rock for me. Our whole marriage.
So lovely. And lastly but not least, Tami.
I think I should have not been last here. All right, so starting with Sophie. Sophie is very driven, very motivated. She's a real go-getter, like puts her mind to it, makes it happen, which is great because I am not that. I am not. She is very loving. She loves her family super hard, all of them. She is very smart. She is just any new information that is out there, she just is very motivated to learn about everything. She is very hardworking. And let's see, what's another good word? It is hard coming up with just one word.
Listen, you've done like so many. You're already at 6.
Oh, good. Well, good.
I was gonna let you just keep going, but
good deal. So then Colton is, I will start with handsome, because that was like the first thing that I thought about him. And he is also very kind. I always love watching him work with the animals because he's just very kind with them. And I think that's great. He's also very all-knowing. Anything I have a question about, I can go and ask. It doesn't matter how random it is, and he knows the answer. Or he knows something about it, or he knows where to find the information. Like, he just knows everything.
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah, he's my Google. And he is very hardworking. I've always thought that he's very hardworking, and he's very decisive. Knows what needs to happen and how to make it work and how to get it done. And he's not wishy-washy about anything.
I love that. Good job, you guys. Good job. Now, Colton, I want to ask you about the work-home balance, because it seems to me that, there's only 24 hours in a day, but you seem to make it all work and juggle it. How do you do that? And what tips do you have for us that are like, wow, you kind of are doing it all?
It's hard sometimes. There are a lot of nights that I don't eat dinner with the family. But the advantage I have is that with my sort of part-time job farming, a lot of times I can take the family with me to do things. We can go for drives to check on the cows, or the kids can come with me when I'm raking and baling hay and things like that. So outside of my time in the pharmacy, I just try to involve my family in as much as I possibly can.
That's a good answer. I like it. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about your TV journey and what you think a season 4 would look like for you.
That's a good question.
Depends on how soon they start filming.
Yeah.
Probably, we are talking to someone, but we don't know where it's going to go. We are interested in meeting her. I'm going to have a baby in a couple months, so that might be similar to last season.
Right.
We really just haven't even thought about a season 4. Honestly,
we've been living life, and
like we're not losing sleep over it. I mean, if they would like us to be back, we'd love to come back. But if it doesn't happen, we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
I think there's going to be a season 4, and I think that again, from a fan perspective, you guys are very refreshing because you're open about all the things. So all the things that could be hot button topics, I feel like you guys talk about them openly and honestly without being judgy, if that makes sense, or without shoving it down people's throats. You're like, this is who we are. This is how we live. This is what we believe. And to be honest, you guys come across very kind. And at first I didn't believe it, but talking to you guys just seem, all three of you just seem very kind in your own individual ways. And I think that that's what makes it special. And I think that that's what people are drawn to, So for something that perhaps they don't understand or didn't understand until meeting some of the families, I think that that's what comes across from your family. So that is just my compliments to you.
We appreciate that.
Let's talk a little bit about what makes, and I know that we talked about the faith component, but Colton, since I have to ask this question, it might seem like nitty gritty, but it's the basics and I have to ask for our viewers. So oftentimes people think that polygamy is really about the man and the man choosing who he wants to be with. What would you say to that?
I would say if that's, going back to our discussion about polygamy versus plural marriage, I would say that probably is polygamy. But we are in a plural marriage.
So is polygamy and plural marriage two separate things?
Yes.
Ooh.
You could technically, we are in polygamy technically. Like if you really want to go by the scientific definition of it, I guess it's actually polygyny. But I don't think that polygamy and plural marriage are necessarily the same thing. I think you can be a polygamist and be in a plural marriage, but you can also be a polygamist and not be in a plural marriage.
Okay, I'm going to need you to elaborate because, you know, in all the interviews I've been doing, I've kind of been using plural and polygamy interchangeably. So now I feel like my mind's blown a little bit. So can you, right?
Yeah, I think that polygamy is a little bit more of a secular sort of relationship, whereas plural marriage for us is very specifically a polygamous marriage that is done very much in the eyes of God, with very strong commitments, very strong covenants involved in the lifestyle that we live up to. And I think that's kind of why maybe a lot of fans are sort of attracted to us, is because we have such rigorous standards that we live by. And that to me is what plural marriage is, versus polygamy is kind of maybe more of just a free-for-all.
Okay. I'm going to be sitting with that for a minute.
Yeah.
So in dating, that must make it a little bit harder to find someone who kind of will gel into the family. So is there like a checklist? You know, like some people say, oh, hey, I like, you know, tall people. I like short people. I like smart people. Is there like a list that you guys have that are non-negotiables that this person must be like?
I think we sort of have a list in the sense that religion is very important to us. It's the reason why we live this way. But honestly, I think it's a matter of staying in tune with each other and with God, and with knowing that that person is supposed to be a part of our family. And I know that's such a broad way of saying it, but if you're really in tune, you're going to have peace with knowing whether it is or isn't supposed to happen.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So like with Kimberly, she was so sweet and loving, and we enjoyed having her here. And at the end of the day, we just didn't have that feeling of knowing that she was supposed to be part of our family. It just didn't feel right. And I think that that's what we try and follow by. We talk about things, and we try and, you know, if we're not sure what it is, or maybe we think that she might be right, but we need to talk about it a little bit more and try and see for sure if we think that. There's more discussion, but I think we all try and stay in check with ourselves and how we're feeling about the person coming in.
One of the more common criticisms I saw of our family this last season is people were wondering why we would even take the time to talk to a woman that wasn't from our background. And I can completely understand that point of view, but we'll have a conversation with anybody, you know, anybody that reaches out to us, provided we have time. Because we have had a lot of people reach out to us since the show ended, and we just have honestly not been able to keep up with all of the messages.
I bet.
Yeah, but we'll have a conversation with anyone. You know, we believe that everybody should have a chance to consider this lifestyle if they want to. But the caveat is we do live this way because of our religion.
And so, unlike some of the other couples, then, are you saying that if someone was new to the plural lifestyle and perhaps doesn't know a lot about it, you would still entertain talking to them and getting to know them?
Yeah. In fact, we would probably, even if it didn't work out and they didn't join our family, we would still continue talking with them and having a friendship and supporting them and finding a life like this if that's what they want.
Right.
And so, where do you meet these people now? Since you are in the public eye, I think that probably makes it a little harder to, you know, weed through just maybe perhaps a fan or someone who wants to be on TV. Like, where do you meet people now? We
actually have not officially searched for a sister wife since probably like halfway through the first season that we were on.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it's pretty much just been people that reach out to us that we've talked with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So some people are sliding into the DMs then.
Yeah.
Quite a few.
Now, I asked this to the other couples, so I have to ask you guys as well. Do you think that it's important because we had Kimberly from North Carolina. Do you think that broadening your search would make a difference, or do you think that keeping it local is better? So it's a two-part question. So that's the first part. The second part is, would you consider an international sister wife?
I think that we're kind of open to all of those because at different parts of our trying to figure out where are we going to find, our next wife. We were looking internationally. We were talking to people everywhere. Like I'm like before the show, I did not know that there were other polygamists outside of Utah.
Outside of our tradition.
Outside of our tradition. And so to realize that there was like so many more people. In fact, when I first saw like the Snowdens on the first season, I was like, whoa, that's so crazy. I didn't even know that was a thing, And so we actually, who was that girl that we talked to that what was the religion? It was Muslim. We were talking to someone that was Muslim, and for me, it's like, wow, like there are more people that believe in this than I realize. And so I think we've entertained all of the above, like that you mentioned. I don't know if we've really settled on one thing. I think it would be nice to find someone local because we jived so well and we kind of came from the same area,
The more we start out having in common, the easier it's going to be.
Right. Now, the show gets edited, obviously. You guys can't control that. Is there something that came across this season that you thought might have been misconstrued that you want to address?
The only thing I can really think of is maybe some of the stuff kind of when Kimberly was here didn't maybe get presented nearly. I mean, it wasn't necessarily, I don't know.
They edited in a lot of awkward silence that wasn't there.
To try and build tension, obviously, and drama.
Right.
And,
the drama,
yeah. But
I mean, otherwise, for the most part, this season, they did pretty good with their editing to stay genuine to what was going on.
Which we insisted on.
Yeah, we were very much involved in helping them find storylines that were true to what was going on, because last season 2, there was so many storylines that were not true to us and things that we would never do. They edited in drama to completely change narratives that completely shocked me.
Did you say you've seen season 2?
You guys seem like a completely different family from season 2 to season 3, to be honest. And I'm actually glad that I watched season 3 and then went back to season 2, because I think that I probably would not have continued to watch you. In not a disrespectful way. You know what I mean? Not a disrespectful way, but this season I was like, wait, wait, are they the same? Okay.
Yeah.
It was so awesome.
We had no idea what we were doing, and honestly, the day at the farmer's market in season 2 was probably one of the worst days of filming that we had.
I would say like the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Because after that, we were like, no, we've got to take more control over what we're filming and what our storyline is.
In season 2, every time we showed up to film, they told us where we were going. They didn't tell us what we were doing.
Until we got there.
And so it was like every single time they came out to film, we had no idea what they were trying to film. We had no idea what our storylines were, what we were like trying to share about our lives. And so they took like snippets of our life and then threw it into their narrative.
Yeah.
And so in the, that just wasn't genuine to us. It wasn't really entertaining to watch it all. It was actually cringy the first season. I did like the tell-all. The only thing I liked about the second season was the tell-all. Yeah.
I think that, and I think the fan base grew a lot more in season 3 as well. And each couple just seemed more authentic, if that makes sense, like true to their story and true to how living the plural lifestyle is a little bit different for every family, as it should be, because people do it for specific reasons. So I think that that's great as the fan base has grown. Now, considering like there's COVID and all of this, the season seemed a little bit short. We felt like, from a fan perspective, a little bit like, oh, so what's next? What's happening? So for you guys, Kimberly is gone and you had your baby, congratulations, all of that stuff. But then we're like, okay, and now what? And then we weren't sure if we were going to have a season 4. And, you know,
Yeah.
I think I can, you know, I think there will be a season 4. I'll say that. So I hope to see you guys and more of your story and more of your journey. And what I hope to see a lot more of is this, you know, just debunking some of the myths. And I know that we do this for entertainment purposes, obviously, but I think it also too can be informational, because oftentimes people, they don't know what they don't know until they don't know it, if that makes sense. And so if I didn't know about plural lifestyles, or at least as much as I know now, had I not watched the show. Of course, I could have Googled it and I could have, you know, read some books and all of that stuff. But sometimes things are presented to you and you're like, oh, now I need to know more. And I feel like that's what's happening with this show. So, yeah, exactly. So I think it's great. My last couple of questions for you before I let you guys go is, your ideal sister wife would be what? And I'm going to go Tami, Colton, and then Sophie. Your ideal.
The ideal sister wife would be, it's kind of a tall order here, someone who gets along with each of us really well and all together, and is motivated by the same beliefs as us. And I mean, that's kind of it.
Okay.
Kind of a lot too, because we're all have very different personalities, and so it's kind of a little bit and a lot at the same time.
So I feel like the outside person saying that you have, I think you need one more extrovert. You have introvert, extrovert, so to balance it out. So I'm just throwing my 2 cents in. Okay, Colton.
This is going to sound very probably sort of overly religious and pretentious, and I hope it doesn't come across that way. But there's a scripture in the Bible that says, as I have loved you, love one another. And I think an ideal sister wife in our family would be somebody that not only loves each of us, but also loves God with her whole heart.
That's a good answer. Where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I would have to say the ideal sister wife, definitely welcome a different type of personality. It's been really awesome getting to know Colton and Tami and their personalities. And I'll be honest, I had never met an introverted person in my life before them. And it was kind of a shock. And I just remember when I first met Tami, I was like, I just need to sit down and listen so that she'll say what she needs to say, because she didn't always just say what was on her mind. So I definitely welcome a different personality. I think that's what helps round us out.
Yeah.
And then obviously someone that is going the same direction as us as far as our belief system, because that's the way we believe in, a one family. We're not doing separate wives, separate families, and we're raising our children together as one. So the way that we teach them is very important to us in following the same route that we're all taking. And then maybe the third thing would just be, I guess getting along with all of us and wanting to be a part of all of us, not just one or the other. That's the biggest problem I think that we've seen is we all get started talking to someone. And there's been so many times, because we do group conversations when we're first getting to know someone, and there's been so many times that the girl splits off and wants to just talk to Colton. That is not what we're about. So knowing that they want the family to begin with, and they want to establish a relationship with each of us, we know that will be a foundational item, that they do want to live this for the right reasons.
That's good. That's good. Question. So the courtship, we didn't really talk about this. So a new person gets courted, which is different than a date night that you have with one of your wives. What is that like? What's the difference? What does that look like? I think I know, but I don't want to presume.
Courtship probably would be what people would think of as being sort of more old-fashioned dating, where I wouldn't ever be alone with her. but it's really dating with the intent to marry. So at that point in time, we've already kind of decided that we're going to get married. It's just really more of like a trial run to see how a woman would fit into our family.
So
And
our
how-
sorry to
No,
add,
go ahead.
our dating area is like getting to know. So courtship for us is we have all decided we're going to marry her. So that's very, very farther down the line, and as far as commitment goes.
So then, is there like a talking phase or like a meeting phase,
Getting to know each other.
getting to know each other,
Yeah.
and then if that works out, then it's the courtship?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of articles and fans say that we've been courting women, but the TV show has never actually seen us courting a woman.
See, I needed to know that. And then for date night, what does that look like for you, Colton? Do you guys like have specific days that you're like, hey, date night Tuesday with Tami? Do you see the alliteration? I thought that was cute.
What Saturdays?
Or I mean, you could have Saturday or Sunday.
True.
Oh, but I could have Thursday. So.
You can have both each of you.
Well, but when do we go?
That means our next flight can only have an M or a W.
Well, maybe we shouldn't do that then. Anyway, sorry about that.
That was hilarious.
So we don't have necessarily scheduled date nights. We just try and fit them in. And I mean, it's not ever like, it's not equal. Like we don't try and keep things perfectly equal. It's more like a pendulum. Like sometimes it swings one direction, and we always just try and make sure it swings back the other direction at some point in time. So I might go on a date with Sophie, and then if we have a couple of busy weeks, it might be a couple of weeks before I get a date in with Tami. But we just try at the end to make it all sort of equal out in the wash.
And usually we base that off of the need, the feeling like, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. It seems like we've just been missing each other with our schedules. I'd really like to plan a date night. So then we just try and plan it in, and usually it's not scheduled other than just based off of the need or the want to go and have that alone time.
And it's usually just dinner and a drive and a nice conversation.
Yeah, because you're parents, so you also have to factor in that part, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, there's not a lot of time in the day, but you guys managed to do it all, and it's fantastic. I always say one last question. This really will be the last question, but with the pandemic and homeschooling and all of that, how did that affect your lifestyle, if it did affect your lifestyle, and just being at home more? Because, a lot of people didn't survive the pandemic. Their relationships didn't survive. Did it bring you closer? How was that for you?
Our life was kind of unchanged because these two are homebodies anyways. And I was high pregnant, so I wasn't going anywhere.
It did.
I mean, we've got friends that we hang out with and stuff, and so we still did that.
It was a long run in the beginning, just not leaving out because it hit right as Sophie was about to deliver. So we were really careful. We didn't really know what was going to happen. Like, no one knew anything at that point, really, just that it was kind of a panic. So we just really stayed home. We didn't do anything. We were really careful and strict about it. And that was hard. Getting used to that. Like, it's not like we went out a lot anyways, but not having the option felt really weird. And I think it was hardest the most on Sadie because she was used to going and visiting grandmas and family and friends and the playground, and then we just stopped doing all of that. So it was really hard for her.
I do feel like it was like I was the bad guy too, because I feel like so I was due in April, and the pandemic and everything started hitting in like February, March. And we were like, we had no idea what COVID meant, but it was all changing around. Like the hospital policies kept changing. And so I had so much fear and angst and like, what is this going to be like? And holy crap. And I've got to go to the hospital. And what if COVID's in the hospital? And what if my newborn baby gets it? And so I felt like it was hard because I wanted to just like have us all stay home. And so I felt kind of like the bad guy because Sadie didn't get to go over to grandma's. So we mutually decided as a family to quarantine at home. And then even after the baby, it kind of was like, is it okay? Should family members that are coming over to see the baby wear masks? Like, I think it was hard in that way, just the unknowing, wanting to make sure that we were keeping everybody safe.
Yeah. And has this pregnancy been a little different than your first pregnancy? Have you had any different cravings? Has it been easier?
Yeah, actually, the first part of this pregnancy, up until like a couple weeks ago, I was craving mustard and jalapenos.
Together?
No, separately. But like I was eating all of the stuffed jalapenos with like the hot sauce on top of them, and I didn't really have much. I think the only thing I craved with Ephraim's pregnancy was blueberry pancakes with lemon curd.
You mostly had aversions with him. Like you couldn't eat hot stuff. I
had really bad heartburn, which I'm now starting to have heartburn again, which is maybe why I don't crave those things anymore. But yeah, this pregnancy has been way different, especially with the whole pandemic and everything. I know it seems like things are starting to make a comeback again.
Mm-hmm.
But my life really hasn't changed much, so I'm always at home anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. But I'm also planning a home birth this time. So.
Oh.
Yep.
Are you gonna have a midwife too? Like do the whole thing?
Yep.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yep.
That's exciting. I have a friend that's a midwife, and she just highly recommends it. So that's like a great little season 4. Here we are. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for joining us, for just being so lovely. I appreciate your time, guys. The Winder family, we're all waiting on a season 4. Hopefully, we're gonna find out about that shortly. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.